Our ranks are thin, but we have all the active people right here. Why don't we go ahead and get started? Beginning with an infrastructure update. Eric, anything to see on the GitHub Actions?
Yeah, I pushed an initial version last night. Let me pull it up and put it in the chat here. Go. Um, so this includes a restructuring just of where the workflows are, and some pretty significant changes to how they work. Let's see. Oh, actually, sorry, I'm just now looking at the file tree and noticing that the way I did this, there's some duplicate stuff. Uh, but anyway, so this includes some little miniature actions that help to greatly simplify the way a combined action will look. And that's spelled out in the commit message. So I welcome anyone to take a look at that and give me any feedback they have. Let's see. And then moving on to the AWS images, I've started uh, looking into the testing there and trying to figure out what's happening with those errors. I hadn't actually seen an issue with Docker install. Um,
Yeah, as I wrote the notes out here, I was going from memory. I didn't go back and look at it.
okay.
Um,
Yeah, it seems to me to be, I think it's an issue where there was some information that may have been hard coded into the old images on like private Docker repos or something like that, um, that's missing from the current one. I did some digging yesterday, wasn't able to find that. I did find one configuration file which I baked into a new version of the 2204 image, and I'm testing with that right now.
okay. So I did give, like I said, I did give the 2204 a run in the
Hmm.
single node case, not when it spins up a second VM, and it worked. So that one seems fine. So your AWS images are different than the I don't know what to call them, the vanilla ones.
Yes.
We could probably get by with just the AWS because if you don't leverage the extra AWS CLI, no harm done. I think that's the only difference, right?
Uh, yeah. And let's see. I'm not even sure if those two, I mean, I wasn't going to make two different images since the jobs decide what to run based on the label. Baking in the AWS CLI doesn't make a huge difference in the image. So
That's exactly. So why don't we go with just one and it'll be used in both.
yeah,
One for
that's
2204 and one for 2404.
and that's what I was doing. And they do
Oh,
have
good.
the AWS CLI on them, or
Okay.
they should. No, no, they definitely do.
Okay. And I don't know that we need the AWS on the label up for it anymore since it's
Okay. Well, so the label changes what gets run, right?
well the only right the label is set in the Jenkins job, which then is interpreted by the Groovy script. Um, it's selected by the Jenkins job. Maybe what are you asking?
So, mm, basically, at least for the Ether on-ramp manual, let me see about a different one. Yeah, so they're parameterized with an agent label. So you can change that at build time. And it seems to me, I think that some of the pipelines will do different tasks if the AWS part of the label is present. If
Well,
that's not
it, the Groovy scripts are different when a second node needs to be spun up. So that is really independent of what the label said.
okay,
So
okay. So
they don't
it's
do anything different based on the label. They're just written completely different.
oh, okay. Then yeah, I do think we could get rid of the second label and just have all the jobs use the specific node.
Good. I think that, yeah, let's go ahead and make that simplification. We still will have the parameter because it'll be the same script that works on 2204 and 2404, but that's just a tiny you.
Okay. Yeah, that's fine.
Yeah. All right, good. So we'll keep plugging away at that one and progress is being made.
Hmm.
Thank you. Anything else anyone else has on infrastructure? Okay.
Can you hear me?
Sorry. Oh, there you are. Yeah, I could just barely hear you
Sorry.
the first time.
Oh yeah, sorry. Quick question. What is the issue with the 2404 image when installing Docker?
Like I said, I don't recall exactly what the error message was, but as I recall, I'm going from memory here, in setting up the Docker image, something failed, and I didn't dig any deeper.
Okay. So there is no plans for now to move to 2404 as the official support.
Well, the
Mm.
plan's still there. We're just in the middle of debugging it. So
Okay.
as Eric said, he suspects there was some magic baked into the old image that we just have to figure out what it was.
Yeah, I think
Okay.
I think certain things are trying to call directly from the either the I think it's actually the open networking um Docker repo rather than the Ether project one. Um
Oh, that would be, oh, I hadn't thought of that, but I
yeah,
bet.
and I think that there was probably like login information on the old one because I looked in the configuration files that are stored on Jenkins and there's no Docker config there, which is where it normally would be. So that is currently my working theory is that, and I looked in the usual places, but I think that um, there could just be a config that's pointing it to maybe a less usual place. Um, and yeah, so I'm just digging through trying to figure that out. The errors aren't super helpful, but that's what it looks like to me. It seems to be erroring like it can't reach something
Mm-hmm.
and it's not saying it's unauthorized, but it's yeah, I don't know, possible that there's sort of a shorthand where the configuration would tell it where to point, something like that.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Okay. Okay, thanks.
So you could, if you're on, Gabriel, if you want to play with any of this on Jenkins, let me think here. Um, well, it's not showing up in my dashboard because you've got a different name. I forget what your,
Oh, so it's on-ramp man it's either on-ramp manual dash test. It'll show up in the all tab and I can add it to this one if it's
yeah,
not.
why don't you go ahead and add it and I don't
Okay.
know, label it somehow that,
Yeah,
yeah,
that's fine. I didn't want to like mess with your tabs while I was doing testing, you know. Just wanted to leave the things that everyone's used
yeah,
to
yeah,
the way
yeah,
that they're
yeah.
used to seeing them. But yeah, if that's okay, then I'll go ahead and add it to that on-ramp blueprints view. And yeah, it's just the
So
one.
this is my manual job that I constantly change what's in there.
Hmm.
So I can go back and look at 164 or whatever it was when I last ran it, it failed. Maybe it was 163. Anyway, what I did most recently was something completely different. So yeah, maybe we should just label these with people's names so that you have a little sandbox.
Yeah, if you go down, like scroll down to where you can see 159, you can see I added a comment on that one about, which script I was running and on which image.
Oh, I'm sorry, this is mine. This is mine.
Yeah.
Not yours. Yeah,
So now if you go back to the on-ramp blueprints view, you should see it, the one I've been using. Yeah, so the
there it is.
second one
Manual.
there.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, so just,
But yeah, so that was,
oh yeah, now I remember this one. Well, where did this one fail?
yeah, that one failed on
Helm tasking.
resolving something.
It looks like there is
The-
some default Ansible package is missing. It looks like the
yeah,
Helm repository package is missing.
Yeah, so that is a place to think about, which is there was magic configuration of Ansible baked into the old images. And I don't know if this would be helpful, but I'll just point you. I think all of the original Jenkins jobs that GS Labs wrote in conjunction with their baked in images are available. Let me think a second. In under static, deprecated on-ramp static, you might find clues in there.
okay. I'll check those out. And one thing is that right, if they're using like non-standard path for configurations, because I found a like .helm directory that was baked into the image, but it was empty. I definitely think that there's stuff in paths that are unusual, but that does mean that probably somewhere in here in the pipelines or the shell scripts that they're calling, there's likely to be places where it's setting those specific paths, and
Yeah,
that'll be a lot more helpful than just going onto an Ubuntu image and like searching around trying to figure out where everything was put.
yep. Okay,
So,
so
so
go
sorry,
ahead.
Larry, quick question. So these AWS images are kind of like lightweight images that don't have the same like the vanilla Ubuntu images, or what is different with these images?
The new ones,
Yes.
the new ones, just that they're not opaque to us. We the images that have been used up to this point on Jenkins were ones that GS Labs put together, and no one had any visibility into exactly how they were configured. All the new
Hmm.
ones are spec'd in an Ether Packer repo, so we will know exactly what it's doing.
Yeah, but my question is more from the perspective of, what is different on these AWS images if you only need to install Ansible and a few dependencies.
You would be shocked at all the things that was going on. I don't know. I
Yeah,
just,
that's
we're totally flying blind. There were all kinds of, I mean, first of all, there were a dozen different images created, and they were all slightly different, and there was no way to know how they were different.
Okay. Hmm. Interesting. Okay.
Yeah, I mean, it's a mystery, and the fact that we had found two images, one 2004 and one of them 2204, that actually worked reasonably reliably was a miracle.
Okay. Thanks.
Yeah,
yeah, I could
it's
give
hard to be more specific than that.
I can
Okay,
give some
sure.
insight into how I look at it from my perspective, trying to recreate them is pretty much I can tell pretty well what's installed on them, what software they require. And so I've got them building with all of that. And then the issue is just that there are certain files that were placed on the file system that those are a little harder to track down. One fairly obvious one was there was like a certificate that was in the Ubuntu home directory that it was using for a few things that I could have put on the new images, but that's not really the best way to do that anyway. So now I've changed the pipeline so that they're getting that PEM file from Jenkins during the job rather than having it on our images where, it's not terribly hard to, s- you know, get Jenkins to spin up that image and just spit out something that's on the file system. So it's not very secure to just have them baked into the image. Yeah, so there's a lot of little things like that where they had just dropped files into these to make them work. And unlike the software packages, those are a lot trickier to figure out. So it's pretty much like running the pipelines with the old image and with the new one and seeing where it breaks and trying to figure out, okay, why does this not work? And that Helm error we just looked at definitely looks like it's just a piece of software that's missing. So that's easy enough to troubleshoot. But then we're getting some other things where it seems to not be able to reach certain external systems, and that's a lot weirder. Actually, I should check the host files on those.
Oh,
Now
good
that I,
idea. Good
now that I
idea.
think about it.
Yeah, yeah.
But yeah,
Okay,
so it's little
let's,
things like that. Could be a host file, could be a Docker or Helm configuration file that's put somewhere. So I'm just kind of trying to track down all those little things.
and I appreciate it.
Yeah, no problem.
Um, all right, SD core, let's move on to that.
Sorry, before we move on, Eric, do you have any update about the kind of consolidation of the OMEC project GitHub Actions?
Um, Not beyond that first thing I put into the chat is the first run through of a Helm release workflow. And I think if you take a look at that, you can at least sort of get an idea of how that's all going to be structured, what those will look like.
Okay. But for now, you are fully concentrated just in the ONOS project.
Yeah.
Okay.
But so once, and really depending on how much difference there is, I think the ones that I'm using for this are only in Onos.
Yeah, the
Do
two
we
PRs I
have,
have
is there
here.
a Helm charts repos in OMEC?
Yes.
What's the name of one of those?
Let me share the link with you.
Oh, sorry, I just found a SD core Helm charts.
Yep. SD code help charts.
Let me
That's
look
what
at
it is.
this. Oh yeah, this is one of the ones I'm using. So yeah, so actually whether I just create two copies of it or they could even just call what I'm writing for Onos project directly from the Onos project's shared repo. But yeah, for example, this Helm chart workflow would also work for OMIC project. And so that should be the same when I do the Docker release. And then from there, so those two are specific to the Rock project, which was sort of a test run for the shared workflows anyway. So yeah, I would highly recommend looking at those. And then once those are done, the next thing would be to look through OMEC for other workflows that we want to consolidate,
Okay.
or other tasks, I should say, because like Docker and Helm releases are usually in the same place, but in this case, everything's going to be kind of set up separately, and then those will be, they can still be called in a single push workflow, but it'll just be much, much simpler, much more abstracted.
Okay.
But yeah, to me, they're one and the same. Whether it's Onos or OMEC, I want all these workflows to be able to be called by pretty much anything for a specific task, and just be able to pass in the right variables, the right inputs, and just work.
Okay,
Mhm.
let's move on to core. Get through everything. Gabriel?
Yeah, so from the core perspective, we released new Helm charts version 2.2.2. The this version includes like a fix on the AMF that basically make the AMF to crash, and this also includes. We recently noticed that the different NFs were going to 100% CPU utilization, all of them. And that was kind of something that Suresh saw it, and there is also another person that is recently started working with Ether. I think he's based on Italy now. He also reported that to me, and then this was something that was kind of fixed at the beginning of last year by the Canonical team, but I believe like a few months or weeks later, the Canonical team actually refactored the whole config 5G and the different network functions, and the issue came back after the refactoring. So now with this new Helm charts, basically they fixed that issue with a 100% CPU utilization, and everything went back to kind of normal usage for the different control plane network functions. So that's kind of the more relevant part. Of course, with this change, we released new images that include this fixing the issue, and some other kind of like dependable updates, dependency updates, and things like that as well. Then like another status update, as I mentioned before, I mean, I have a good progress on the SMF. For now, I'm trying to address an issue with a multi-part response. I'm having some problems in here, but for some reason the Gnode vsim receives an empty, I believe it's N1 or N2, no, N1, receives an empty N1 container. So for some reason that's not getting properly, it looks like it's not getting properly encoded or something on the SMF, and that's something that I need to address. So while that was happening, I move on into the NRF because this is kind of like a simpler NF compared to the SMF. And in this one, I have most of the changes done. The only thing that is I'm addressing someone missing callback because OpenAPI generator doesn't it doesn't support callbacks yet. So that's something that I need to manually see how can I properly address. So those are the yeah. I don't know, Ajay, whether you have something on the something else on the SD core.
Um, there was the query on the GNB scene from one of the community member. Oh, I don't know, like the maybe like documentation was not referenced by the member or something. I have responded to him to see how we can start the testing on the fly when Genode sim is already started, right? How to add new profile. One of the smaller thing which the person has asked is that if you can get the profile status uh, instead of waiting for the Genode sim to complete the run, right? I think that's something part probably easy to add. I have asked the member if he's willing to make the contribution. That was one thing. Others like a couple of code review. I'm yet still need to finish the code review from Canonical, if I'm not wrong, on the web UI side. It's about the subscriber authentication details we are keeping in memory as well as in the database, and there is an inconsistency identified by a Canonical team. So that code is still under review. And had few calls with Bilal about he was trying to understand the way we have done the multi-instance AMF and multi-instance SMF design about client side load balancing, and he was trying to understand can we use some of the CNC projects as a load balancer instead of having our own client based load balancing algorithms. So I provided him details. So he is working on his looks like paper. Mm, and hopefully those details should be helpful for him to make further changes and maybe more experimentation. And I don't know if the but there were two more PRs came from the was it like
iOS team, I
iOS
believe.
MCN team, if I'm not wrong. I don't know when I merged them. Was it this week or last week?
Last
Yeah.
week.
Okay, last week.
Yeah,
So
those changes were already included
I
in
believe
the
those
new
changes should
images.
be part of the new release, right?
That's correct. Yes.
Okay.
Just one kind of comment, Larry, what Ajay is mentioning about the PR from the Canonical team and the web UI. That's what we discussed last week about the 4G, 5G stuff.
Yep, saw that. That's what I was guessing.
Yeah. And one more thing that is not there that I just remember. Do you have any insight about what we discussed last week about the licenses for the dependencies?
No, I didn't get anything done on that.
Okay. Well,
Okay, yeah,
since
that's
Ajas is here, I can give him some context. If you can go a little bit down for last week agenda, Larry. So the main thing is that there is a the dependable open new automatic new versions for the dependencies, especially for the ones that are Golang base related dependencies. So they are these dependencies, these PRs are failing in multiple things, multiple actions like linter, build, and some other stuff, and they are failing because of the format that we have for the Go version. We're using just major, minor format, and they are requesting for a major, minor, and patch format, also the typical Semver format. So after I manually changed the format to the Semver format to comply with this new version, then other issues start kind of showing up, like this YAML version 2, that is the second bullet. That basically hasn't moved for a while, so since November 2020. Then I was thinking on moving to the next version, which is version 3, that I think is like latest version. I think it's from 2 years ago, 2 or 3 years ago. At least it's a newer version. But the thing is that the YAML v2 is an Apache license, but the YAML v3 has a mix of Apache and MIT license. So basically, I was kind of asking what is the guidance on regarding on that side, whether we can just move to the dependency start using YAML v3, which has this mixed license, Apache MIT, or what is the guidelines on that side regarding the dependencies.
So
But
I think
logically,
Eric,
MIT is also okay, right? MIT is also permissive, right? Yeah, Larry.
sorry to interrupt. Go ahead.
No, I was saying like MIT license is also permissive, right? Typically, it's fine. MIT and
Yeah,
then
so
BSD.
right. So the MIT license I think is fine, but it was a technicality. Is there anything special we need to do? And Eric, maybe you have some thoughts on this?
Yeah, I don't really have any
Yeah.
insights into it. We use Apache for pretty much everything. And in terms of having that sort of mixed license coming in from something else, I haven't had to deal with that before.
I think in the Golang, it's very common when we import the modules that modules could be from MIT license or maybe Apache or maybe even BSD license, right? So, but okay, so Gabriel, what is your point here? Like,
Just to
this
have
MIT,
any.
it's failing the CI.
Yeah, it's failing because of these kind of dependencies, right? So
I see.
then we need to move on into newer versions, but that's when my kind of more like guidance I would like from the TST is
Mhm.
okay, how we're gonna deal when there is these different kind of licenses. Um, that's kind of is
Okay.
more from guidelines from that perspective. Yeah.
Okay.
I shouldn't say versus so it's a mixed license situation. We have, for example, MIT and Apache. Is there an issue with that? I will try to get a resolution on that for next time. I dropped the ball on my action item.
Mhm.
And I mean, this is proceeding with extreme caution because I can't imagine there's a problem with those two particular licenses. And there's no sense asking for trouble and worrying about a worst case combination. All right, I'll try to get an answer by next time, or I'll
Thanks.
post it to TST Slack if I get something.
Thanks.
All right, SD-RAN. Denise?
Sorry about that. I just wanted to put out a reminder to everyone that we do have the SD-RAN 1.5 Techinar tomorrow. You can register to attend. I included a link here. You can also see it on the Aether website. So Wu Zhang is leading that, and we invite anyone to join us. So feel free to share the link. Anybody can attend this. And I do believe we will be opening up for questions at the end.
Did this
Which is
did this
great.
get posted to the Ether Slack?
Say again?
Did this get posted to any of the Ether Slack channels?
I don't believe so.
Do you have access to those?
It's a good question. I did not post it to Slack. I can look into that.
But please do, because that's where most activity
Okay.
like this what people would
Okay.
be paying attention.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks. All right, on-ramp. I didn't put a bullet here, but I'm reviewing the latest pull request with the 2.2.2 upgrade. I just need a little bit more time on that. I think, which is kind of related to the next bullet, which is there's been a flurry of pull requests to on-ramp recently that are stressing our capacity. I'm not sure how else to put it. And one note is anytime there's a change to on-ramp and the justification for it is of the form, there would be production deployments that would need this degree of freedom or whatever it is. That is an infinite supply of potential changes to on-ramp. And I just wanted to have a discussion as to whether that is the right scope and maybe this is just sort of one-off cases and it's not going to be an ongoing question, but it's related to the next point, which is that everything we do about testing assumes on-ramp itself is relatively static. And every now and then someone will add a new blueprint, but on-ramp itself, except for upgrading version numbers of the components being deployed, like going to SD Core 2.2.2, the rest of on-ramp isn't changing rapidly because the testing infrastructure is a whole lot of manual testing that goes on there. If we want to validate a change to on-ramp, continues to work for all blueprints. And I don't know if there's anyone has opinions about that or thoughts on it, and maybe just hearing what Intel Labs's scope is would be helpful.
Sure. Well, just one thing to clarify, right? So the assumption that on-ramp is going to be relatively static, that should be assuming that everything that depends on it is going to be static. So basically, nothing on SD-RAN, nothing on RIC, on the AMP, it's moving.
Well,
Because
no,
if
no, no,
there
no.
are
So I'm sorry. So relatively static.
yeah. So because
Certainly upgrades in versions, we have to deal with over time. Yeah.
yeah, no, I'm not referring specifically to upgrades in version, right? So because there's gonna be different APIs, there's gonna be different changes or new parameters that you may need to start kind of like exposing those things. That's one just high level comment. So we have, lastly has been some good activity on the 5GC itself, just kind of fixing several things and they're exposing some others. So that's why these things come up. So one of the things, for example, was the validation for the device group IDs, right? So Grok is doing that validation, but the CMAP or the web console itself wasn't doing that. So CMAP basically was sending anything as a name, and that was valid from that perspective. But Canonical is making these improvements on the web console, so we need to start making those changes as well on the on-ramp itself to reflect those values are actually present there. That's one thing regarding that part. Now, the other part that the easy learning, the idea in general is to keep on-ramp as easy to deploy as possible, regardless of their deployment, regardless whether it's somebody, in the university trying to get familiar for some research, or somebody outside trying to kind of start with a 5G system. The idea is to make it as easy as possible, but at the same time, it has, as you just write it down, it has to be robust, right? In our case, for example, the last patches that we have been adding, at least the multi-hop itself, as I mentioned last week, that is something that is not just benefit on the project that we are working right now, but it's also benefit the ARA team as well, because that's something that also we first heard about this kind of limitation from Joshua in the ARA team. Basically, because in their deployment, the GNOT Bs are multiple hops away from where the 5G is. The initial assumption on on-ramp is that the GNOT Bs are on the same subnet as the on-ramp machine, right? So even though we are making these changes to support these additional capabilities, but the initial state is still there. I mean, nothing has changed unless somebody changes multi-hop to true. Then the behavior is going to change a little bit, but otherwise, having as the default value of multi-hop equal to false, the behavior is exactly the same as it has been so far on ramp working as of now. So at least from my perspective, at least on our side, we have been thinking on kind of how to make changes on improvements in on-ramp that are generic enough and are not special for one use case or other. But basically go across the different boards. And that's why also Suresh opened the PRs regarding this multi-hop capability. That's something that also affects the OAI and the UE Rancine blueprint. And also he opened one PR for that, such that, it goes across all on-ramp in not just a specific component that we are currently working on, which is primarily the 5GC and the SRS RAM.
Right. So I don't have a particular, just to be clear, I'm not arguing that any of these are inappropriate, and I do appreciate that they are generalized as to the extent they are. That's all good stuff. I'm just raising awareness that there is a slippery slope here in terms of if you tried to bake every contingency about what a particular deployment might need, this will grow unwieldy. We aren't there. I'm just saying that there at some point we need perhaps to think about if there's a boundary, and I don't know where that boundary would be. But the other half of the issue is when we do these changes, I'm just raising awareness. It's a fairly labor intensive set of testing that has to happen. just because of the baked-in assumption that the tests we have help test a breadth of blueprints when the core changes, but we don't have an automated way of testing on-ramp at the sort of at the meta level when these changes come about. Now, that's just a time, time availability kind of thing. It's not a huge risk to go ahead and accept a PR, even though we haven't tested it against all blueprints and all scenarios, because we can always just take a step back if we discover a problem. But that's just, yeah. And also, I'm just saying there are limits to how fast we can approve blueprint, or I'm sorry, deal with these in a safe way. Again, I could go ahead and approve them and hope they work on the other blueprints, and maybe chances are they would.
Yeah, well, you have kind of like two approaches there, right? So when a PR comes from somebody who is already contributing to the project itself, and you are kind of fairly certain that that individual already tested those changes locally, that will be kind of give you certain confidence about approving the PR. But additional to that, you can try to start kind of like automating all this stuff from the PR perspective, right? So something similar that we are doing with GitHub Actions, but you can, since you are relying on Jenkins, integrate Jenkins on the GitHub.
Oh yeah. No,
on
that would be a wonderful answer to this. We're just not there yet. I'm just saying that there's some manual overhead that goes on right now.
Yeah, but probably if you kind of like, if there is a way for us to kind of concentrate on automating this part, because that's a one-time effort that is going to be reused for all the different PRs later on. So that's going to make things simpler for the future.
Yep.
So there is no need to keep doing the manual testing. So if we concentrate on automating that part, it's going to be a just one-time thing, and then we forget about it, kind of like validating those manual testing.
Yeah, there is a complication, which I have thought about how to factor this a little bit to automate it. There's a complication that you have sometimes to deal with multiple PRs simultaneously because it's an integration test. So there's a change to GNB Sim, and there's a change to the core, and there's a change to rock, or whatever combination it is. And so you're now wanting to, I've actually had scenarios where I've attempted to validate multiple pull requests simultaneously. So it's kind of a sticky space.
But it depends on how complex you want to do it, right? So because if you want to validate multiple PRs simultaneously, I guess those PRs are from different repositories, right? These not multiple PRs from the same repository. Let's say multiple PRs for the Aether 5GC. So basically, you can do automatically, but why do you want to do that?
Well, I can't remember the particulars here. There was just a situation where it required testing across multiple pull requests from multiple repos. I don't remember now what the scenario was, but I'm just saying that is something that we've done.
But that would be kind of like an exception case, right? Rather than the general case.
Maybe, but there another very obvious example is there'd be a change to the GNB Sim repo and the core repo. That's probably fairly common. I mean, you're right in everything you've said. These things can be automated, and you can automate the common case and not worry about the exceptions. I'm just saying that from a project-wide perspective, this turns out to be a little bit of a, I don't know if a bottleneck is the right word, but there's some challenges in this. And that I'm just, again, it's just a discussion point to make awareness and to see what people's thoughts are. And certainly one answer is to go ahead and aggressively accept changes without absolute certainty it worked across every configuration, and then clean up any mistakes afterwards.
No, that's what I'm saying. Depends of who is open the PR. If the person who is open the PR is someone that who is already contributing to the project, is already you already know the person that is kind of like have been making good contributions, having progress, so you know that the person is responsible enough to kind of test the changes uh, locally, right? That kind of give you certain confidence. But ideally, it would be just to kind of start kind of automating all this stuff, so that takes that relying on goodwill of the people of validating the PRs that nothing breaks, and even unintentionally, sometimes things break. So the easier that we automate, that it's better for everybody. So PRs get merged with confidence. There is less manual work, but again, keeping in mind that this is easy to learn tool, and having a good robustness deployment. Otherwise, complaints are going to be coming, or it's going to be difficult for new users to start using the on-ramp
Yeah.
itself.
Yep, yep. Okay, thanks. That was all good discussion.
At least that's my thoughts. I don't know what else. Somebody else has something different or.
Uh, let's move on. We're near the end, and we have. I see that a note here about using charmed Ether core. Is there anything to say about that? You just trying it out?
Yeah, so last week, Joshua and I have a discussion with Canonical about their Charm Ether SD core. Yeah, we are planning to try to deploy it in our test bed first, and then we will have another discussion to discuss like how we can take use of this part. Yeah.
Interesting. Yeah, it'd be interesting to hear what your experience is.
Yeah, so Setter suggests us to try it first, and then we will have a more detailed discussion about like how we can utilize the Charm SD core. Yeah.
Right, nice. Thanks. All right, near the end of the hour, is there anything else?
Yes, one question. So regarding this kind of like integration stuff, I don't know whether Eric would be a good thing. Is there a way for us from the OMIC project itself to have an Jenkins integrated into our repositories, primarily to kind of test this end-to-end, run end-to-end tests? Because so far we have been trying to do, along with the canonical team, we have tried to do using, kind of the same GitHub runners, but it seems like they are kind of limited on capabilities and resources. So it's making it a little bit challenging, at least for the Gulson, who is in the canonical team, working on this to kind of complete this task. So an alternative could be, having a look into on-ramp, I'm sorry, into Jenkins to see whether we can automate this part. Any thoughts on that, or any way that we can run at least a test to see whether this is a good alternative?
Well, we could set up triggering just one of the existing jobs, as an example in the integration test. Whenever there's something checked in to a change to a Helm chart, the challenge there. Well, if you're doing it on a pull request to change the Helm chart, it's different than on the Helm chart itself. Once you made the change, you can easily trigger an integration test.
Yeah, no, I'm saying before. No, no, I'm not even talking about the Helm charts. I'm actually talking directly to in the different network functions themselves.
Yeah, but if you make it the problem, well, I'm sorry, I'm starting from a frame of reference where the Helm chart specifies what actually gets the integration test run. Now you could define a new integration test that allowed you to change out individual sub microservices.
Okay.
Well, this is a huge. in the end, this would be a very good thing to do. It's just it's a pretty sizable, I mean, what I'd like to do is figure out what would be a low bar thing we could try and then build
Mhm.
from there.
Okay.
Anything
Yeah, I don't
else?
have anything else on my side. Thank you.
All right, thanks, everybody. See you again next week.
Okay, bye.
Thank you.